Well, first up on the bulletin, let's tell you how India's G20 presidency has been the most ambitious in the history of G20. In fact, there have been 73 outcomes, which as well as 39 annex documents which are coming in, which relates to presidency documents, not including the working group outcome documents. With 112 outcomes as well as presidency documents, we have more than double the substantive work from the previous presidencies as well. In fact, 2 by 5 number of outcomes have also come in. There have been annexed documents as well as compared to any of the previous presidencies. In fact, this is going to be one of the biggest G20 takeaways that one is going to remember, that under India's presidency, the G20 has been most ambitious and the action-oriented of all the previous G20 presidencies if you compare it with the previous one. So what are the big outcomes? Are all the details that Pragya is going to be getting for us. Sabyasachi is also going to be joining us. Pragya, if I can hand it over to you, tell us the outcomes and also contrast it with the previous G20 summits which have been held.
So, Meghna, the biggest contrast that we have is that Bali, we had chair summary, but this time we have new.
There seems to be a bit of a problem there. We are going to reconnect with Pragya and get you more details.
Okay.
Pragya, if you can hear me, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Basically, if you look at the hard work that has been put before this New Delhi communique has been agreed upon by this nation, it's a hard work, and Prime Minister acknowledged it. He, in fact, thanked his ministers and also the Sherpas and the officers involved in the task. They burned the midnight oil. It's been a year's hard work, and not just this one. There have been finance track, health track. There have been so many track, and they, had so many negotiations of hours. In fact, keeping crypto into the agenda is really hard work. The finance ministry had to work so hard to bring meaty conclusion, and eventually all the nations agreed to it, and that is how it worked. So basically, we also, sacrificed. There are, when there are so many nations, everyone has individual aspiration, but you sacrifice some for the larger good, and you be rigid at some where you see that there could be a larger good for that. India did exactly that. So if you see the negotiations, the hard work that has gone into it, the major achievement is New Delhi Declaration, and Prime Minister thanked everyone whose efforts have gone into it. And people may say that it's just a play of word, how we have toned down the language from the Bali communique, but in fact this is what diplomacy is all about. You have to at times say good words to pacify some of the grievances that they may have, and finally you get the final result that you are looking at. The major issue is having the global south issues addressed in this whole G20 summit, and also inclusion of African Union. This is the biggest takeaway. It's a history that has been written today when African Union grouping that has 55 nations indeed in this block of African Union. They are now permanent member of G20. A very big instance today that has happened. Why African Union is important? African Union has 55 African nations, and 60% of the renewable energy assets of the world, and 30% of the minerals. It is a big emerging market for the global world, and no one can dare to ignore it. India has seen this chance, and they are.
Okay, Pragya, just hold your thoughts. Siddharth also joining us. Siddharth, I'll come to you, but let me quickly underline why we are saying this is the most ambitious and this is high on scale and substance both. Double substantive work than previous presidencies. Remember, viewers, G20, this is the 18th meeting. Siddharth, the first G20 happened in 2008 in the United States of America. And over the course of the last 2 decades, great progress has been made. But if you see the progress made in this G20 under India's presidency, it is high on all counts.
Absolutely, Pranesh. So what must be emphasized here is the fact that what's been unprecedented is that this this particular G20 has taken place in almost 60 cities across different parts of India. Every state and union territory has been covered. And just to give you the scale and magnitude of what's actually been happening and how it compares to some of the previous G20 summits. Now, in terms of the productivity and the outcomes, this ranks right on top. So this is, of course, from the G20 website, where in terms of outcomes, it numbers at 73 as opposed to 27 in Indonesia, 36 in Italy. So almost doubling what was achieved in Italy almost 2 years ago. The number of annexed documents that these particular meetings have now yielded is 39 as opposed to 23 in Bali in Indonesia, 29 in Italy a couple of years ago, as many as 8 in Saudi Arabia before that. And the total that you actually see is an unprecedented 112, more than double of what was achieved in Bali under the presidency of Indonesia, and almost 1.5 times that of what was achieved in Italy. A lot of this, of course, has been made possible by the fact that there are a lot more items on the discussion agenda this time around, also resulting in the fact that the African Union has now been incorporated formally as part of this entire grouping, and the fact that this has taken place across so many different parts of the country, covering a myriad number